Hey guys, I'm learning TFT. In this video, I'm going to go through the biggest AVP and stats changes between the last patch, which is now, I believe, called 13.2b, and the current patch 13.3, right? Changed their naming system. I'm going to talk about the high-level trends that Tactics.tools has, and then go into a detailed analysis on all of the comps, how they performed in the last patch, how they perform currently, the difference in their statistics and the patch impact, and what the conditions are to play them. Before I jump into that, I do want to talk a little bit about how to approach a new patch. And if you want to jump straight to this analysis, I'll provide timestamp in the description below, so feel free to use that. So first, I want to talk about this graph here, which is related to an idea of flow that Mihaly, how do you say his name? Csikszentmihalyi, a psychologist, who popularized the idea of flow, which is like basically optimal performance. And I've talked about this before in a previous video, but I wanted to talk about it again because I touched upon this in the last video, where in the beginning of a new patch or set, you can feel like, and you can actually look at this chart as a pressure or anxiety chart on the x-axis and a performance on the y-axis, so how optimally you can perform. And when you are in the flow, you are operating at a very high level of performance and just the right amount of anxiety and pressure. Whereas if the anxiety or pressure is too high, then your performance severely declines. Or if your anxiety or pressure is too low, then your performance also declines. So what often happens towards the end of a patch or set is a lot of times people kind of stop learning, that you get bored, and they call this bore out here, where you might cap out in your LP growth because you've gotten comfortable with a set of comps that you've learned. You're not really stepping outside of your comfort zone. And so then you cap out, your performance declines because you're not really challenging yourself. Whereas when you're at a high level, too high level anxiety, you get burnout because you're pushing yourself too hard. You feel like everything's chaotic. You don't understand what's going on. You're completely lost and dizzy. And that is a sign that you are putting yourself under too much pressure, and there's a lot more learning that you need to do before you submit yourself to so much anxiety. And one of the things I'm actively working on in a new patch is to play less and to study, research, watch VODs more, so that I can shift where I am on this graph from up here to closer over here. And so when we are studying more, we can basically increase our skill level so that it matches the anxiety level that we are facing. So I had a while ago, I'm an executive coach, and I put together a thread on flow for executive founders before, which is that flow is achieved when our skill perfectly matches the level of our tasks. So that's when you're able to get right here, where the anxiety level matches your skill level, so you get optimal performance. Boredom and anxiety are information that can help us achieve flow. So when you're bored, it tells you you don't have enough anxiety or pressure. You're basically not challenging yourself enough, and so it's time to try out some new comps. Maybe you're playing normal mode. You can try putting yourself into a ranked game situation. Whereas if there's too much anxiety, which often happens at the start of a new set or patch, then it might indicate that it's time for you to spend more time learning, researching, getting more comfortable with the new information that has arrived so that you can increase your skill level. So boredom says that your skill level is higher than the skill of the task. It suggests that we need to increase our skill level of the task, which means that you got to challenge yourself more, put yourself under more pressure and anxiety. Whereas anxiety, if you have too much of it, tells us that your skill level is too low. It suggests that we need to increase our skill level. So we need to research more, study more. Discomfort will try to stop us from increasing our skill level. So when you're over here, putting in deliberate practice, studying the stats, watching VODs can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like it takes a lot of courage to admit that you're a beginner, that you don't know stuff. And so that can feel uncomfortable to lean into discomfort. And yet that is the most effective way to increase your skill level. And that leads to flow. So this is true not just for TFT, but in life. Whether you are trying in your job to, you're under too much pressure and you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're not actually trying to increase your skill set. You're not, let's say you're a programmer and you haven't really gotten up to date with like the latest AI, machine learning research, and like, and maybe that's important for your job because maybe some of your job functions being taken away from that by other AI developers. And so that's like an example where maybe you feel like a high anxiety, but you feel uncomfortable in investing in increasing your skill level. On the other hand, there are plenty of situations in real life where we get bored, we don't push ourselves, push the skill level because maybe we're afraid of failure, and we just get bored. And so that also doesn't put us into a state of flow. And yes, in my video yesterday, I talked about finite and infinite games. When you are playing an infinite game, it's trying to get into this green zone, flow zone right here, optimal performance. And the only way to really do that is to find that sweet spot of just enough anxiety or pressure. And that's where joy and flow and high performance comes from. And one of my favorite quotes related to this topic is by John F. Kennedy when America decided to make the investment to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And so that's also what I love about TFT is that this game is not easy. You see plenty of players, top challenger players, elite pro players that say like, this game is fucking hard, I suck, right? And that's to me, that's a feature, not a bug of TFT. Because if it was easy, if you could solve the game like Connect 4, Tic-Tac-Toe, these are solved games. It's too easy, right? And even like if you think about a game like chess, where it's the game is fixed. Like yes, you can get closer and closer to optimal play, but the amount that you can learn incrementally becomes harder and harder. Whereas every time there's a new set or patch, you actually have a huge opportunity to go through this process of finding how to balance on this curve. And the process of doing that in each new patch and set cycle actually helps you create mental resilience for yourself, which is a great skill to learn, not just to get better at TFT, but to be able to figure out how to get flow in TFT and also in your life. So that is why I am challenging myself, and I challenge you to figure out where are you in this curve right now in the beginning of a new patch. And once you have identified where you are on the curve, it gives you a better sense of what you can do, whether if you're over here, play some ranked games or push yourself to have more, like play wider comps that you're not familiar with, or try out augments or anomalies or whatever that you haven't tried before. That's a way to increase the anxiety or pressure. And that will actually increase your overall performance over the long haul. It might not increase it immediately because you're learning it. And sometimes when you're learning, you make mistakes, you fail, but that eventually leads you over here. Whereas if you're maybe trying too many new augments, too many new comps, sometimes maybe you pull it back a little bit. Maybe you do more research, you study more stats, you look watch more YouTube videos, VODs, etc. And so when you get over here is when your LP really starts to climb. It's when you feel like everything's clicking. It's when you're having the most fun. And so this is not a place that you could just stay up here, right? This is not a stable equilibrium point. It's like you're kind of constantly off balance and trying to figure out where you are, which again is part of the fun of this whole idea. And it's a mental game, not just an intellectual puzzle to solve. All right, so with that said, I want to go over high level trends and then go into the stats here. So you'll notice that Bruisers, the one costs got buffed, Zyra got buffed, and Twitch got buffed. And these have led to a big change in probably the biggest winner of this patch is Bruiser or Experiment Twitch. And you can see that the AVP here is the diff. So if it's negative, that means it got significantly better. And if it's positive, then it got worse. Same thing with this is the pick rate, win rate, top 4 rate. So here I did last patch Masters Plus, whereas this patch is Diamond Plus just because the sample size isn't as high. And Camille also got buffed. You can see here Snipers got buffed. All of these are part of the Twitch board. Nunu, so like almost all of these units. And Renata reroll got nerfed, Nocturne got nerfed, Violet got nerfed, all the Automata got nerfed, and 8 Sork also got a huge buff. And you can see here that these are all why this got nerfed here. And another big thing to call out is that Chem Baron got a huge nerf, which allows a lot of the other comps that maybe are more expensive and harder to stabilize in the late game. It requires a lot more investment, so you're losing a lot more HP, which even if you hit those boards in the last patch, you would just die to a high roller, not even high roller, just like someone that's playing Chem Baron. They don't even need a high roll because the Chem Baron the trait was just too strong, whereas that's not necessarily the case now. And so that's really opened up a lot more lines that take longer to stabilize. So I'm not going to go through every single comp here, but I do want to call out kind of the big winners. One thing I want to note here is that I highlighted in green the comps that are more unconditional, and yellow, light yellow is more of a like kind of somewhat conditional, and then white is very conditional. So I'll kind of just start with like the big AVP diff winners. So Trolling, Trundle got a buff and the Augment got a buff. And I filtered this by Trundle 3 and with a BT. And the stats went from 4.8 last patch to 4.2. Of course, this hero augment scales with the number of kills that Trundle gets. So grants him permanent 1.5% attack damage. Strongest Trundle's ability grants him, so you want to be able to have him survive longer in fights, which usually means you want an early 2-star Trundle. So I don't know if this is an instant pick if you have no Trundles, but it does imply that you should be Trundle should be a very high priority hold, not only because of the hero augment, but because Bruiser Twitch is so strong. And Scrap is also viable. So you have so many lines with Trundle that if you happen to be holding Trundles and you hit this hero augment, it can perform really well. And 14% for a 1-cost hero augment is actually quite high. Like if you compare that with Violet reroll, even last patch, 11% versus 14% here. The other big winner, hero augment wise, is Crimson Pact Vladimir reroll. So Sorks was buffed 4, 6, and 8 gives more AP. Zyra and LeBlanc were buffed, which I don't know that you necessarily play Zyra late game, but you can definitely play Zyra early game. And a Zyra 2, the stun is pretty valuable. And if you get an early 4 Sork, but I believe you play this line with Watchers. And I filtered this with Vlad 3 with a Rage Blade. And that went from also a 4-8 to a 4-2. This doesn't cap as high as Trundle, interestingly. Probably because Trundle actually has scaling. And with Trundle, you can play late game like with Porky or Twitch. Although Twitch is probably super highly contested. And then, so that's the 2 hero augments. The other big winner is Camille reroll. It went from a 5-1 to a 4-6, so it's not necessarily a line that you can take all the time, but with the right artifacts, Spectral, Cutlass, Prowlers, Silvermere, and Infinity, although Infinity Force is not as good, so with the first 3 artifacts, this becomes basically an S tier line. So now it's basically like you can see here that Prowlers is a 3-6 on Nocturne reroll, whereas it's a 3-3 on Camille reroll. And Spectral is a 3-7 on Violet. So now Camille, for some of the premier artifacts, becomes the prioritized reroll line. And the reason that also got better is because all 4 of these ambushers got buffs. Silvermere Dawn did get nerfed, so it's not the best artifact that Camille has, but it makes the early game and mid game a lot easier to play. You can stabilize with Camille a lot better. So yeah, Camille is very solid in the right situation. Also, since Camille, I didn't include here, actually Loris was also buffed. There were a bunch of Enforcer buffs too, so it was Loris and Step. So basically a lot of the supporting cast around Camille was buffed in like a million ways. All right, so after that is 8 Sork. 8 Sork went from a 4.5, which is just average, to having the best AVP in the game. 4, 6, and 8 were buffed. Zyra and LeBlanc were buffed. This does require an emblem to get to 8 Sork. So it is challenging to hit. And on top of that, you can see that your front line when you're playing 8 Sork here is not very strong. And it does require a LeBlanc. So getting to this board can be very challenging to stabilize in stage 4 and 5 before you find the LeBlanc. So a lot of times you have to play it from ahead. But until you find the LeBlanc, you can use Black Rose as a way to kind of stabilize in the mid game. So something like this. The good thing is that Zyra got buffed, so your early game becomes a lot easier. And when you get 4 Sorks, it's a lot easier to play. You can also go for a like reroll Swain Nami emissary line. And you can go like alternatively Form Swapper. What else do we have here? This is like a good default board. Like before you find LeBlanc, you would just have like 4 Black Rose or 3 Black Rose. So there's a lot of different ways that you can play it, but the highest cap is with 8 Sork. This one's white because it is gated by the emblem. After that, we have Bruiser Twitch. So Bruiser Twitch is gated by the emblem. So this board. And you see here that I broke down the stats with the Bruiser emblem. It averages a 3.7, and with the and this is with a Twitch 2 board, so it's not exactly correlated with this 4.3. But it does tell you kind of the relative strength of each of these. So you might expect that without Bruiser emblem, this is probably closer to like a 4.4 or 4.5 line with the experiment, which is this board here. So it doesn't cap as high as this board. And by the way, these aren't positioned perfectly because a lot of times you have to play around where the hex is, the experiment hex. But this was, as I showed in the other, in the trends page, a lot of these units were buffed. DB was buffed, Deathblade. Collector was nerfed, but also the Anomaly, Center of the Universe, and Mini-Me's were buffed. And Center of the Universe is good on Twitch because when his ability casts, his range massively increases to across the whole board, and the stars will hit the enemy backline even if they're all the way across the board. Mini-Me's was also buffed a lot, and so I believe it scales by attacks speed. Yeah, every 2 attacks, and it reduces armor. So basically, when Twitch's ability starts, he like attacks a bunch, which triggers the Mini-Me attacks more. Oh, whoops. And then Center of the Universe, the orbit expands to hit the champion's current target. So when Twitch casts his ability, it expands. So I was just watching Robin's stream, and he skipped, I believe, both of these, and then chat was flaming him because they were like, "This is now BIS." So take that for what you will. I don't know how. I haven't actually tried either of these, but I've seen a lot of people say that they're good. Next, we have 6 Scrap. The Scrap shield duration was buffed, which just makes them a lot more durable or more tanky. Ziggs was nerfed, which makes the mid game a little bit more challenging, although usually you're playing around AD anyway. And Echo was buffed, which increases the upside cap of this line, which is why you can see the win rate went from 11 to 14%. Also, Echo's like not very contested. It's like basically you're playing 6 Scrap or you're playing Camille reroll, so that's something to scout for if you do consider playing 6 Scrap. DB was buffed, which helps Corki. Collector was nerfed, which kind of is good on Corki as well. Another one I want to call out is Zeri reroll. This is like the old Kog'Maw Watcher Firelight board, but because Zeri's AD was buffed, I saw a lot of people playing this today, top challenger players, just focusing on rolling for Zeri instead of Kog'Maw. And you need a lot of bows for this. Like I've seen people do double Rage Blade, triple Rage Blade, especially if you get anger issues. I believe anger issues with this is like super insane. In fact, we can't get it exactly, but if we go Zeri 3-star with triple Rage Blade here, I suspect a non-trivial amount of this is from anger issues. So the stats on this look pretty crazy. Let's see. So those were the big winners. A lot of neutrals. And the big losers were Nocturne reroll from Automata nerf, Artifact nerfs. Same thing with Automata. This is the emblem, like the 6 Automata line got nerfed a lot. And Renata got nerfed a lot because both Singed and Renata were nerfed. So this line got hurt a lot. And Chem Baron. So Chem Baron went from a 4.7 average, and and a 33% win rate to a 5-0 average and 25% win rate. So a lot of times I believe now when you're playing Ken Baron, before you could actually have 2 Ken Baron players like top 4. And if you just got 400 or 500 cash out, it was like an easy, 500 was like an easy win. 400 was like a easy top 3. Now I feel like I've seen 500 cash outs go bot 4. 400 cash outs definitely could go bot 4. So now every time you play Ken Baron, you almost need to basically hit 500 for it to be like going for a win. And obviously 600 is going to win like most of the time. But Ken Baron, you almost like need to play it with an emblem or like a 2-1 start now for it to really pay off and not be grieved, which is probably healthy for the game. As far as the standard lines go, Academy Sentinel didn't really change much. I'm looking at highest play rate from last patch, so that was 0.9. 7 Rebel didn't really change much as far as the impact. Black Rose Silco, the pick rate went down, so it's not as contested, but the AVP is about the same. The challenge is that this line really uses Mundo as frontline, but now a lot of Twitch lines are taking the Mundos away, so that can be harder to stabilize. But part of it could be that so for Emissary and Bessa got hit a little bit from a pick rate standpoint. The AVP is about the same, but this implies that the Garen for the Black Rose Silco line is a little bit less contested. So even though Mundo's more contested, Garen's probably easier to hit. All right. That should cover the major changes for this patch. I hope you found the analysis interesting. I hope that this has helped you move a little bit more from here up the curve. And I encourage you to actively think about where you are on this curve and how to shift your habits to improve your overall performance, find more flow, and have more fun playing the game and thinking about the game. So with that said, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, I would love to hear your feedback in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.